Hi all. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Happy midweek. Happy May the 14th, 14th. I was having some fun with AI this week, so hope you find it as amusing as I do. Thought we would do our regular way we start for those who haven't joined us before. One of the things we've been doing while we've been waiting for folks to join us is do 3 local SEO truths and a myth. This week is photo related. And so the 4 statements we have here are adding EXIF metadata to photos uploaded to GBP can improve local ranking. Photos inform Google and can open businesses up to additional opportunities for search visibility. Google gives preference to new photos and videos in search results. And Google prefers to highlight your photos over your customers' photos. So while we're waiting, if you want to go ahead and answer, love to see what everyone comes up with. And again, hope everyone has having a great week this week so far. And for those who are wondering where Casey is, she's not joining us this month. I think we mentioned last month she is away with family enjoying Disney right now. Yeah, I wish her the best. I'm sure she's having a blast. But with us this week is Damian Rollison, who, for those who haven't met Damian before, he is our Senior Director of Market Insights, and he always brings a wealth of knowledge to any conversation. And this week, he's going to be giving us some more details on AI search. And we'll go into that in a minute. Oh, here we go. So what do we have? So number 1, adding EXIF metadata to photos, that has 28%. Photos inform Google and can open a business up to additional search results, has 6%. Google give preference to new photos, 11%. And the one everyone thinks is the myth is Google prefers to highlight your photos over your customers' photos.
You got him, Mike.
So I think I may have. So for those, again, I don't know, just before we go on anything, Damien, do you want to say anything? I know I kind of gave an introduction. Is there anything else you want to say in introducing yourself this week?
Oh, not really. No, I haven't done a SOCi webinar in a little while, but I used to do a ton of them. So happy to be back again and yeah, to be covering the news with you.
Oh, and thanks for joining me. Didn't want to be the only one talking.
Sure.
I can get tired of myself. So to go through our 3 local SEO truths and a myth, adding EXIF metadata to photos uploaded to GBP can improve local ranking. Those who have been with us since the beginning, this was a news item back in, I believe, October. But this is our myth. At SMX Advanced, which, Damien, what is SMX Advanced? I don't even necessarily know. You're usually about all the events that go on.
Yeah, SMX stands for Search Marketing. X is for Expo. It's a conference in the SEO industry that is sponsored by, well, it used to be Third Door Media that owned Search Engine Land, but Search Engine Land was recently acquired by SEMrush, so I don't know who owns it now. Anyway, it used to be a pretty big conference in SEO and is has been around for years, and still continues today, I think, under a different banner.
Gotcha. Yeah, and this one I think was in London, and someone at Martin Split from Google was there speaking, and he reconfirmed that Google does not use EXIF data for ranking. So your photos that you're uploading to Google do not need this.
It's an old myth. It used to be something that was recommended by people who kind of didn't know better, and it's taken a long time for it to kind of fully die.
Mm. And as we've talked about, Google uses their Vision AI, I think, pretty extensively to understand photos now beyond data that people attach to them. So our truisms, our truths, photos inform Google and can open businesses up to additional opportunities for search visibility. If anyone follows me on LinkedIn, I posted something a few weeks back where I did a painting search and a racetrack came up because of photos. This is a really great photo I took yesterday. I did a search for pizza, and once you get past the 2 paid spots at the top in Google Maps, You have your top unpaid organic spot, this Portofino Pizzeria and Deli, and below it is discover through photos. So essentially these two photos are getting the number 2 and 3 organic spot. And neither one of them is a pizza restaurant. One is a resort hotel and one is a seafood restaurant. So it shows you can show up in a lot of other searches if you have really good photos that highlight what it is you do, what it is you offer. And this is just a really great example of that. And if you look, actually, when we go into it, what's really funny is there's pizza restaurants next to it. And I think there was another, oh, here it is. This painting class is one that I grabbed. This one I thought was interesting. This is the one where we got a racetrack that came up. And I think the reason that Google's bringing these up is there were probably events at a racetrack, at a visitor center, and Google sees those photos and assumes that means there is a painting class. So here we've got a Mexican restaurant, and then here, race course right there. And it is a race course. They just happen to have a photo of a bunch of paintings. So I thought that was great. Google gives preference to new photos in videos and search results. They seem to, especially when you look at Google Maps, the Google Maps app, they tend to tell you when photos were uploaded. And here's one where I found a business that just uploaded a bunch of new photos within the last 2 weeks, and almost every new photo is being highlighted in the photo carousel. So Google is trying to give the most up-to-date information to the customer, and wouldn't that include photos? Right? And lastly, the one that was checked off the most is Google prefers to highlight your photos over your customer photos. Damien was actually on a call with me with Google, where Google said explicitly that they would prefer business photos over customer photos. They tend to be higher quality. They tend to be taken with more purpose. And they just highlight the business better. But Google also says within their guidelines that if your photo that you upload is low quality, or it's not the best, that they may take another photo, but they do want your photos.
What I remember, one more detail was that they will choose the business's photo over the customer's photo when looking for a photo of a particular subject if there are two choices, right? So in other words, if it's a picture of tacos or a picture of, painting events or whatever the case might be, they would prefer to choose the business's photo. So, but if there are more customer photos covering more subject matter, right, then you're not necessarily going to win out in that fight. So the idea is to have photos representing all the things that you want to rank for, and to have them be, great quality recent photos.
Yeah. And that's also another thing that came up even, I think, yesterday with someone had asked a question about photos they don't like that are appearing. And my answer is always just upload better ones and more recent ones. And Google will typically replace that. So
you can have the UGC photos taken down, but only if they're irrelevant or really bad quality or other things like that that violate Google's terms.
Yeah, so just put up a better photo and typically you'll take that place. So today we're gonna go over industry news as we do every week. I am going to highlight, I don't know if who was able to attend. 2 weeks back, we had a webinar with Google where we highlighted a study we've been doing, which I've been talking about here in the SEO Juice. So I wanted to give kind of an overview of that. And then Damien is here to talk about AI. We talked a little bit about it last month. He's going to come and he's been doing a lot more research than I have. He's got some really great information on ChatGPT that he's going to share with us today. Going to share some more industry search trends. Casey showed some last month at a really high level. We've broken it down a little bit more. It's still evolving, but wanted to give you some benchmarking for Q1. And then a few new categories, attributes, and then some things we are seeing in the wild. So without further ado, let's get moving. So industry news. So re-verification bugs. We've been talking about this since late September when we saw re-verification start to increase. Through our partnership, we've been working very closely with Google they've been working on their bugs, but we've been working to validate a lot of their bug fixes because they've been fixing things at different levels. One of the things we've been able to validate is most category, so secondary category updates and other types of updates are not causing re-verification at this point. If you're a customer of ours and you do see that, let us know, let your CSM know, because it shouldn't happen. And we are working closely with Google to make adjustments where needed. The things that could still require re-verification, though, are things like changes to primary category, unless it's something similar. So what they gave as an example is something from like grocery store to discount grocery store. Or we had some customers, I don't know if there's a news item last month about Google turning off reviews for general education schools. We had some schools that were Montessori schools, but they were preschools, so they switched from Montessori school to Montessori preschool, so they were able to keep their reviews. That was okay with Google too. So as long as it's similar, you're probably okay as well. The one area they said will likely cause a need for re-verification is if you change your business from a storefront business to a full service area business, because in that point, the idea is you don't have signage, you might not be in that same place. So Google, it makes sense that Google would want to validate that you are still a business in that area and that you meet all of their requirements for that. So takeaway here is make those changes, especially if it's going to help you, it's going to help your visibility, it's going to help your engagement, whatever that is. Go ahead and make those changes. All right. Now, another news item, I'm going to hand this one off to Damien because he was on the announce on this, and I'm really excited. I think this is a great feature. So,
Yeah, so I have to give Mike credit because you talk a lot about the importance of Google Posts and the different ways that they can show up, as well as, I know you're going to get into this today, the importance of linking your social profiles to your Google profile, right? And this news item kind of touches on both of those things. So this was announced on a call that I was on with Google last Friday, and then this week they've posted about it. So it's officially live now. It's a new feature called What's Happening, although you don't actually see those words in the feature. What you're looking at in the screenshots there are some images that Google shared where you see in the left-hand screenshot, this week is the header, and then there's some content about an offer, which you're drilling down on the offer in the successive screenshots. So the next one is what happens if you mouse over it, and then if you or tap on it. And then if you tap on it again, you're going to go to the view on the far right there that shows you the full offer. Basically, what this is either Google Post content or social media content if your profiles are linked to your Google profile. You can't enable this, but you can be eligible for it, right? So what's happening is one of those features that may appear in your Google profile if you're publishing Google Post content that relates to a timely offer or an event of some kind that Google can then choose to highlight in your profile. There are some restrictions. It only appears right now in mobile search and not in Google Maps, but only in the search version of the mobile result, and only if you're searching for the business directly. So you have to search for Franksville, Chicago in this example in order to see the feature show up. I couldn't actually reproduce this myself the other day, so I'm not sure if it's going to show up for everybody. But sometimes with these things, Google says it's fully live, but it's actually progressively rolling out to its entire user base. So you may not see it right away. But one of the tips that Google offered was to include content that is tagging your offer as being timely. For instance, if it's for Mother's Day or the 4th of July or something like that, then the content may be more likely to be picked up by Google. And again, you can use Google Posts to become eligible for the feature. You can also have relevant content on your Facebook, Instagram, or X profiles. And if those profiles are linked to your Google profile, which is a setting within the Google profile settings, then you can be eligible for that content also to show up in this new What's Happening area in the Google profile. Bad news, however, at least for now, This is only available to food and beverage businesses, so only restaurants, but even more importantly, only available to single location businesses. So restaurant SMBs are the initial target. Now, Google does tell us, though, that this is going to be coming for chains. And they told us some other things that I'm not allowed to share yet that are hopefully soon about the fact that I'll just say in general, posts are going to become a little bit more important in terms of the features that Google offers. So this is exciting news, I think.
They really do want, and I don't think it's given much away. They want, and I've been saying this for a while, they want to expand this. They want to see more of this. And food and the beverage just happens to be the place of testing it, especially probably I think that they post the most about deals and offers and things they have. So it makes sense. So thank you, Damien. So we'll be keeping an eye out when that starts appearing more. Lastly, for those who don't know, Google apparently is streaming the process around video verifications even more. With now they're a couple months ago, they would give you reasons for rejecting the videos, but now they're actually allowing you to review those videos before submitting so you can make sure that you're checking all those boxes off. I will say for those wondering why video verification is required at all for bulk verified accounts, we've just kind of seen that Google kind of claim that, you know, bad actors have taken advantage of things like bulk verification. And so, you know, that might not have otherwise passed. So this is a way that Google is validating all of this. And so they've taken a one size fits all approach for now. Hopefully it will continue to evolve. I have passed along a customer passed along concerns around, you know, enterprise businesses doing video verification for a location where you just have like a manager, like there's not an owner there that has that profile doing things like that. They're aware that that's a concern for a lot of businesses and they've kind of passed those along, but we'll see what happens with that. So just wanted to give the latest on that. One of the things we also do when it comes to news is we have a local memo that we put out every Wednesday. And Damien, we kind of switch off authorship every week, and this week is Damien is putting that together. And I want to know, Damien, is there anything from that? There's usually like 3-4 big news items. Is there anything that you think would be great for the group here today that you want to?
Yeah, so the local memo post should be live within the next hour or so on our blog, so you can certainly read more there. And I would encourage people to check out that post every week because what we really try to do is keep up with the latest industry news across search and social and the AI platforms, et cetera. I do cover the what's happening feature that I was just talking about in Google Business Profiles as a new feature. So that's one of the items covered this week. The other two things I'll just mention briefly. There's a court case that Google is in the middle of right now where they're accused of being a monopoly. In fact, there's a couple of these cases, but the one that is now in the midst of the penalty phase where Google might end up having to sell off the Chrome browser and so on. There's been some documentation included in that case that includes notes from a meeting a few months ago with Google executives where they very clearly acknowledge that they feel they are going to lose market share in search to AI, and that they acknowledge also in this meeting that their biggest threat is in fact ChatGPT. The idea being that if they can divert that user base moving away from search, away from ChatGPT and towards Gemini, that's the best case scenario for Google. And they also talk in the notes about the idea of possibly introducing ads to Gemini so that they can begin monetizing that platform. And also, interestingly enough, introducing shopping features to Gemini, which is something that ChatGPT just did, right? And Perplexity has also just today announced that they're integrating with PayPal in order to add shopping features to that AI platform. So this story is just an acknowledgement on Google's part, a little more explicit than we've seen before, that they in fact are losing market share in search, or that they expect to lose more market share soon, and that they need to do something about that. And then the other small item had to do with the fact that Google not only has Gemini, but they also have an experimental tool called AI mode, where you can switch over from the Google search interface to a full AI interface. In fact, very much like the Perplexity browser or Perplexity platform, rather. AI mode is, they're experimenting with the idea that you can get to AI mode with a button that replaces the "I'm feeling lucky" button, which has been around in the Google interface since the beginning of Google. There it is, "I'm feeling lucky." So AI mode may in fact be replacing "I'm feeling lucky," which would be a very historic change on Google's part and an acknowledgement of the rise of AI.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Damien. Yeah, for those who want more information, go to our SOCi website afterwards, SOCi.ai, and our blog. So moving on, really quickly, wanted to give some highlights from the ranking fact is social ranking factor, this case study webinar that we had a few weeks back with Google. I've been teasing this for a while. The feedback and the data was amazing from this study. Those who've been joining us are probably sick of seeing this slide. And just some background for those who haven't been following this. Almost 2 years ago now, in July, Google added the ability to add links to your social media profiles via Google. Before that, it was a whole series of things you had to do to get it to be recognized. When that happened, I assumed there was a reason for that. Like reviews, I figured that social signals can play a big part in relevance. How many likes do you have? What kind of posts are you putting up? Are people sharing your content? Stuff like that. So when Google came to us in March of, and one of the reasons I think that too, beyond this EEAT, is there is this prominence thing that Google talks about in their own ranking factors, where they say it comes from things like web, links, articles, directories, website, reviews. So why wouldn't social be a part of that? So Google came to us, our partner came to us kind of late last year, saying, hey, we'd love to do a test around this. And so Painting with a Twist, one of our customers, scored very high in our LVI. If you don't know what that is, our local visibility index report that we come out with once a year. Damien's heavily involved in that. And we'll probably have him back when that comes out again this year to talk about it. But part of that is the customer very visible, and one of the reasons they landed at the top is they're very socially active. So this was a really great customer to see kind of effects of adding social links, very active social links to Google business profiles. And so a test group was selected where the average growth rate was about within 1% from the test group and all the rest of the locations. They were identified in November, links were added. And then we gave very specific recommendations for improving engagement over this 3-month test period from January to March. So some of the key findings that we found is the test group's growth rate for search impressions. So we looked specifically at, I should say, at search impressions and web visits as kind of the main drivers for them, specifically because they're a Painting with a Twist is like a paint and sip class. So if you're looking for them on Google Maps, you're probably on your way. You've already paid for it. And if you're using direction requests, you're on your way. So for them, leads really come through web visits. They come through people searching. So their search impressions specifically, even though their map impressions went up too, but we looked at these two factors. Their search impressions outpaced the control group by nearly 9% year over year by the 3rd month. The test group's growth rate for web clicks and phone calls outpaced the control group by more than 10%. The customer, so this is what Painting of the Twist told us, they saw a 8% increase in overall web traffic for those listings, or for those particular locations over the rest of their locations. And they saw a 14% increase in Google sourced users, so specifically around Google. So the data itself and what we saw. So this was, I mentioned at the beginning that the growth rate was within 1%. So looking at the search impressions specifically, January through October, the test group and the control group were within a 0.8% growth rate. In November, they added links, and I didn't think we were going to see much growth at all. We met with Google just a month into this, what would be the 3-month period, and we wanted to see how those locations were doing. And we saw within November, December, January, they had already grown by 7%. The growth rate was already outpacing that. And it started in November. It was a steady curve. So this idea that just adding those links had some benefit, but then in January, when they started ramping up the kind of engagement they were trying to get, it went even further. We saw that by February, it went up more. And then by March, it was at 9%. When it came to web clicks, we saw the same thing. Whoops. Started out within 0.3%, went up to nearly 7, 8, and then over 10% by March. And then from phone calls, we did track that as well. We saw slower growth, but it was steady and it was consistent. As an SEO, fascinated by this. This is exactly what I had been hoping we would see. But you're probably wondering, what did they do differently beyond what we said? So what did they do differently? The test group locations published 61% more Facebook posts during that 3-month time period, January, February, March. The test group locations published, again, nearly 60% more Instagram posts. So again, they were trying to do things that were going to boost engagement. Part of that is also just posting more. Although they focused mostly on Facebook and Instagram, we did look at the other ones. Only 34% of the test locations post to LinkedIn, but they did it 330% more than the 11% of the control group posting. So of those posting, they were doing it a lot more than the ones that were posting within the control group. Even though very few, only 35% of the test locations and 21% of control locations are posting to TikTok, yeah, they're doing it a lot more. Or just more of them are doing it, but at about the same rate, sorry. And then lastly, we looked at X. Only 6% of test locations and 4% of control locations are posting. Not very many people are taking advantage of X, at least in that industry, but they were doing it 200% more of the time. So again, all of those test group locations were engaging more on social. We're trying to engage with customers and getting that engagement back. So the takeaways here. Add social media URLs to your Google business profiles. If you're not already, I've been talking about it since we started these almost a year ago now. So please, if you haven't already, do this. For platforms where you do not have localized profile, links to your brand URLs are completely acceptable per Google guidelines. So you want to make sure you have an active channel linked up. So again, maintain an active social presence. Create posts that both inform and prompt engagement. So you want to inform because Google gets information about your business through that, right? And people then understand more about what it is you offer. But you also want to do things that prompt engagement, that get people to engage in that, whether that be with Painting with a Twist. It was a little easier, right? You have people coming in, you have a painting class, you're posting those pictures up. People like that because they painted it and share and do all that, but figure out ways you can do that within your industry. And localize wherever possible, right? You want local relevance. Like, relevance in your industry is good. Local relevance within your industry is even better.
Hey, Mike, there was actually a question that came in. I think you may have just answered. So the question asks, was Painting with a Twist posting local content or content created by the brand? I think she means, was it local content or sort of just nationwide brand marketing type content?
It was a little bit of both. I would expect that some of that discrepancy in the amount of posting, everybody was getting sort of brand posting that they can use, but this, posting around, local posting, there was a lot of that. I think that's what that extra Instagram, Facebook posting was around that, was very localized. So, were they Google posts specifically, or were they? Oh, they were not Google posts specifically. These were posts that were on Instagram. These were posts that were on Facebook, and they were posting there. One of the things they did say, though, which comes from Painting with a Twist, they do post a lot on Google as well. This was really interesting. Why they participated in the test. One of the local search, one of their biggest traffic drivers. Their goal is to see if small profile enhancements lead to real business results. And this is some of the data they got. One of the things that I wanted to say, where is it? Here it is. I love this. They said local search, they look at that as a brand showcase, not just a directory. So they also put a lot of pictures and post a lot within their Google business profile, events, images after the events, whatever that is, to again show customers that are finding them in this directory, right, what that experience might be. And so this is just some of the feedback that they had. So
And I don't know if it's worth just saying one more time, in light of the questions, what you're talking about here is having the social profile connected to the Google profile makes you eligible for the idea that when you post on content on Facebook that would be relevant to show in the Google profile, Google may then showcase it in the Google profile too,
that's
right?
true.
That's kind of the phenomenon that we're talking about. So um, you only have to post in one place, but you're eligible to appear in both places.
Sure. But you want to, it's good to have it everywhere where you might get that engagement so you can get those signals as well. So anything you want to add here just at the end, Damien? Any questions or just, for the audience? Or let me see. Do you have information and I want you to share with the social team? Yes, I actually do have some of this around. And actually, for those who are customers with SOCi, if you're interested in doing this test, if you're interested in what I shared with painting the twist and the ideas and things like that, let them know. I'm continuing the testing because we want to continue to validate this. So please, yeah,
In
we,
terms of, no, I don't really have anything to add except to give you a plug. The webinar that you did on this topic included a representative from Painting with a Twist and also one of our Google partner people, and it's very fascinating. So the deep dive on this story is definitely worth checking out. If you weren't able to attend that webinar, you can still get it on demand. Just need to go to our website. I don't know if Danielle can drop a
oh,
link into the landing page there, but I think
in,
that I would definitely say that's worth watching.
yeah, looks like it's in the chat. So perfect. Thank you. So in the interest of time, we're already halfway through. I want to get to yours because I think this is fascinating. So last month, I kind of gave a high level overview of things you can do to start preparing for AI, just more around optimizations and things like that, and where I'm seeing information coming from. But Damien has done a much deeper dive into ChatGPT and how it conducts local search. So I am going to pass this over to him to go through what he's found.
Yeah, might as well. Yeah, go to the next slide. I was going to say. So the first question that might be in your mind here is why should we care about ChatGPT for local searches? After all, mostly what we talk about in this context is tends to be Google and to some extent social networks for search, etc. But ChatGPT, we know that the growth of that platform is one of the more significant stories in tech today. They're at 400 million active users now, which is about 4 times as many as they were just a year ago. So, they're really growing fast, and especially younger consumers. But really across the board, we see consumers using ChatGPT for a variety of purposes. And one of them, in fact, is local search. So in our new Consumer Behavior Index, which was just launched, was it only last week? I believe so. Just last week. Our new results show, and this is a chart from the new report, that when we asked consumers which sites or apps have you used to look up information about local businesses in the last 30 days, ChatGPT is now on the map. 10.8% of consumers have in fact used that platform. It's outpacing platforms that are much older and more established, such as TripAdvisor, only 6%, right? And even Gemini, another AI platform, Google's platform, as we were just talking about earlier, 6% of users say that they've used it for local searches. But ChatGPT is really the growth platform in AI. It's by far the most commonly used, and it's the one that's defining a new standard for consumer search interfaces in a way that people are starting to respond to. So we want to understand, if you're conducting local searches in ChatGPT, what does that mean? How does that work? And that's what I wanted to do some investigation in. So if we go to the next slide. So first of all, we know that Google knows that ChatGPT is, in fact, its biggest threat. This is the news story that I'm covering in the local memo today. where Google has acknowledged that search traffic decline is inevitable, and that it's the most important factor in that decline is the rise of ChatGPT. So even though only 10.8% may be using ChatGPT for local today, that's on a growth trajectory. That was zero a year ago, right? So is it going to be double next year? Is it going to be even more? This is really an area that is emerging as a newly important channel. Next. So the question is, how does search work on ChatGPT? And the first thing that you need to understand, I asked Google, and here's the AI overview response. How does ChatGPT search work? The first thing you need to understand at least a little about is this concept of retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. You may have heard that term before. The simple explanation of what that means is that, as we know, ChatGPT is an LLM, a large language model, right? And so mostly what it's good at is reading a lot of text, ingesting the entire internet, understanding what you say to it, and producing a good response synthesized from all of its different sources. But in terms of searching the live web for new information, that's not something that the LLM natively can do on its own. So what it needs is an augmented tool, retrieval augmented generation. Now that applies to lots of different things. ChatGPT may go check code libraries when it's helping you to write code. It may check, different kinds of sources. But in this case, what it's doing is it's connecting itself to a search engine, interpreting a question as needing to have search engine information, going and asking the search engine, retrieving the results, and then processing them. In the context of search, that's what retrieval augmented generation basically is. So that's the first thing to understand. Let's keep going. Now, the second question would be, okay, what search engine? So if ChatGPT needs to use search, it needs to be augmented by a search engine. You might naturally think that the first place they're going to go is to Google, but in fact, ChatGPT does not have a direct connection to Google. They tried to establish that connection, but Google refused because of obvious competitive reasons. So they instead partnered with Bing. In fact, they've been partnered with Microsoft for almost from the beginning. And Bing is in fact the search index that ChatGPT uses. And then according to this Search Engine Land article from last November, in fact, Bing SEO on Bing is now more of a priority than it ever was, specifically because ChatGPT makes use of it, except it isn't quite so straightforward as that. So let's keep going. All right. So here's a comparison of ChatGPT's answer to a local query. Can you recommend dry cleaners in Red Hook, Brooklyn, in comparison with the Bing Places result? So the first thing you notice is they don't look the same and they don't have very many of the same businesses in them. So I just tallied a few of the differences here. On the left-hand side with ChatGPT, you see 3 results. Bing Places gives you 5. Only one of the businesses is the same, but, and this is the kind of thing that SEO people are going to pick up on, the name of the business is not rendered the same. We've got Cobble Hill Cleaners ampersand laundry as the second result for ChatGPT, but the Cobble Hill Cleaners A&D laundry is the result in Bing Places. So that doesn't look like it's the same source, does it? The maps look different. ChatGPT has written descriptions, Bing Places does not. ChatGPT has a click to call button, Bing Places does not. So it's not an identical result. It isn't as though ChatGPT is just a wrapper on top of Bing Places, right? There's more to it than that. So let's keep going.
I will say, can I ask a question? You may get into this. And I think you do. So go ahead. Sorry.
What we actually see is that the result has more in common with the Bing web result. So if you do this search on Bing and you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see those organic web results underneath the local pack. And lo and behold, the first result in ChatGPT is the first organic web result, the clean wash in Brooklyn, right? The second or ChatGPT result, Cobble Hill Cleaners ampersand laundry. Look at the exact same spelling in the third organic result. You can see the arrow pointing to it right there. So that apparently is where that came from. And Bridgestone Cleaners, the third result, in fact, appears in the Yelp result. So the organic results from Bing are much more consistent with what ChatGPT is showing. And that, in fact, is the discovery that I made in investigating this. So the next slide shows, okay, so what's going on? How does ChatGPT conduct local searches? This is funny, Mike. I asked this question, and what the Google AI overview gave me back is a summary of my own article on search engine land.
That's great.
A funny little moment. I've never seen my own article summarized by AI overviews before.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll just tell you what it says because this is a summary of the article. So, ChatGPT leverages Microsoft Bing for local search results, but it doesn't directly use Bing's local listings or Bing Places data. Instead, it conducts a Bing search for the query, gathers a selection of the top web results, and then uses its own ranking and organizing logic to present, well, this says more useful results, to present its version of the results. So it basically reorganizes the Bing web results, not Bing Places. So next slide is what the more detailed breakdown, again from the AI overviews, gives you. And I'll just kind of quickly summarize this. So Bing is the foundation. ChatGPT has access to the Bing web index, not the web search interface, but the websites that Bing has indexed to bring them into the interface. When you ask for, can you recommend dry cleaners in Brooklyn, it goes and conducts that search in its Bing index and brings back candidate results, about 20 or 30 Bing results. By the way, I asked ChatGPT, how do you do these things? And partly my answers are based on what it told me compared to what I was seeing in the actual results, right? So 20 to 30 results. It then organizes those results according to its own criteria. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But it does not access Bing Places directly. It also does not access the sources of reviews, for instance, that Bing Places utilizes, such as Facebook and Yelp. It only gets those through the web results. So that's basically the summary. And then I have a diagram in the next slide that kind of walks you through the process. So ChatGPT again uses retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to go to the Bing web index to search for a term like best dry cleaners in Red Hook, Brooklyn, gathers 20 or 30 of the top results. And then again, it uses this selection process, which includes criteria such as, is the site behind a paywall? They don't want to include any sites that are, so those are excluded. Does the site have structured data? That would be a positive signal. So the presence of structured data is one of the things that ChatGPT is looking for. Does the site have relevant or useful data to help me answer my question? And does the site have some kind of an authority? Is it a well-respected site? You could use a concept like Moz's domain authority as a kind of a stand-in for what ChatGPT is looking for.
And we kind of last
Yeah.
week, last month, I talked about structured data, and what I did find is when websites appeared or were sourced, they always had structured data. To your
Yes.
point. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
definitely the exact same thing when we were talking.
And that's also a criteria for being included in ChatGPT's new shopping results, right?
Mm,
That your product pages have structured data on them so that ChatGPT can understand it. So yeah, the idea of schema markup, for example, it's newly important in this
mm.
context because that's one example of adding structured data to your web pages. Um, and then ChatGPT's front end creates the map that you saw, the local tiles. Those aren't always present. Sometimes it just gives you a list. So one of the challenging things is that ChatGPT results are not always identical to each other, but often you're going to get a map like I was just showing, and some kind of tiles or carousel representing the business. That's all created by the ChatGPT interface.
Yeah.
And then and then populated with the results from the web. Yeah.
I did notice when I was doing some research, when it was after hours, let's say, when businesses were closed, I was getting fewer maps and it was more informational. And when I was doing it during open hours, I was getting a lot more traditional local looking results. I don't know if you saw the same thing, but that's
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot yet to discover about the way ChatGPT behaves.
Mhm.
And not only that, but even Gemini, and other LLMs
Mhm.
deliver local results in different ways at different times. Maybe because it's different users, maybe because the LLM is making a new decision every time. It's kind of hard to say, but my expectation would be that the more usage in this area, the more the pattern of the response will settle into something more recognizable and predictable.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure it'll do what Google does, right? Like it'll start deprecating the things that people aren't interacting with and highlighting the things that they are and trying certain things out. And
yes, but the other aspect to emphasize is the way LLMs work is the more they are used for certain purpose and the more feedback they get, the more they refine their response, right?
exactly.
So there's that kind of aspect of the LLM that's going to end up drilling down on a certain, what is the most pleasing version of this response? That's the other factor that I think is important. Um, so I also compiled top local sources from ChatGPT for about 100 different local searches. And basically, what this is telling you is that in order to optimize for local on ChatGPT, you need to be paying attention to a few really important sources. Yelp is very, very common. Your own business website or local landing page is, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Mike, very frequently cited
Yeah.
in the ChatGPT result. So those two, as you can see from the pie chart, those two by themselves are the majority of what you need to care about. But depending on your category, there are some other things like TripAdvisor, Facebook is in there, Reddit is in there, and several other sources, as you can see.
I noticed the Better Business Bureau came up a lot when I was doing like financial services kind of searches, especially around like individual um, you know, advisors, like a financial advisor or an insurance, broker, like individual people, like there was a lot of Better Business Bureau sources when it came
Yes,
to YMYL kind of searches
yes.
using the Google term.
And that again relates, remember the criteria I was talking about before. Is it relevant? Does it have structured data? But also, does it have authority? And the Better Business Bureau is one of those sites that has been traditionally considered by Google and now again by ChatGPT to have a high degree of authority in terms of the information that it offers.
I think one of the things that this shows, and it's something I think I left with last week, is do some searches of your industry and see what kind of sources are cited, because it is different by industry, and that can give you a sense of what you need to be paying attention to.
Which is actually a great segue to the next slide because I think that might be my
Oh,
first recommendation. Yeah. So, what can you do to optimize for local searches on ChatGPT? And as I said, the first thing to do is to check out how your listings appear not only in ChatGPT results, but also in Bing web results. So conduct some searches in ChatGPT to kind of see what's showing up, but also check what's happening on Bing. And what you will likely find is that you're going to see sources similar to the ones that we've been talking about. Therefore, your opportunity is to optimize for the best sources, the ones that are most highly ranked, most recognizable, carry the greatest authority, aren't behind a paywall, all those criteria, right? So your own website, Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, typically those are going to be the ones, but your results may vary, right? If you're in a niche industry or uh, if your locations are in a geographical area that has prominent local directories or whatever the case might be. So you need to check out what Bing is surfacing and ChatGPT is therefore having access to related to your business. And then, as a sort of a more general recommendation, publish helpful content that reflects your expertise. Publish it on your local landing pages, or link to that content. Publish it in your social media, publish, on Facebook, etc. That's another area where you can gain visibility in ChatGPT, because people are going to be asking questions that relate to that expertise, and you may then appear as answers to those questions. That's not so much a local recommendation, it's just a general recommendation for visibility for your brand, but it can lead then to a local transaction. And then I asked ChatGPT, what do you recommend people do? One of the things that I thought was a little counterintuitive is to claim and optimize your Bing Places listing. Well, why would you do that if ChatGPT is not looking at Bing Places? Well, one of the reasons, in fact, is that claiming and optimizing your Bing Places listing may increase the likelihood that your website ranks in the organic results. So those two things, just as they are in Google, are kind of tied to each other. So that's a reason why Bing Places optimization may be important. And then there are other things, and if you follow the QR code, you'll get the article that I wrote for Search Engine Land with more detail. But one other recommendation is to try to earn links from local directories, from local press sources. Those are other things that you can do to kind of increase the likelihood that you're going to appear prominently in those Bing web results, and therefore in the ChatGPT result.
Wow. Thank you, Damien. That was fantastic. And I hate to keep just kind of pass off and not have a lot of questions, because we've got like 8 minutes left, but this is fascinating. I highly recommend, if you haven't scanned this, go read the rest of this article. The information is super fascinating. But also we're going to share this afterwards, so you'll be able to get this link if you missed it here. Got a bunch to go through, not a lot of time, so I'm going to do this quickly. These things, again, this is going to be available after the fact, so if you can't write all this down, don't worry, we're going to share this afterwards. One of the things that Casey highlighted a little bit last month, our industry search trends, it's something that we're diving into. We're still evolving how best to present these, but I wanted to give everyone a snapshot into Q1. One of the ways we've looked at this now, instead of just giving a bunch of data on numbers, is looking at growth year over year, period over period, on a location average. So this isn't looking at a whole bunch of data up and down. This is looking at all of the individual locations that we manage. These are the averages of increase, decrease, and then I've split this up into a couple industries afterwards. One of the things we have seen is that year over year, search is absolutely down. We've definitely seen that quite a bit in Q1, but leads are still up a little bit. So the people that are searching are focused on converting or doing something. Period over period, usually I say when you're comparing against yourself, it should be year over year, because all businesses are cyclical. But to let you know how the industry is doing period over period, we also want to include these things. We'll say map impressions, search impressions, they are up though over the fall even, and leads are up as well. So diving into a couple other ones, again, I don't have the time to go through all these. We'll share these afterwards. But retail taken a really big hit there, but we've seen year over year leads are up. So people are still shopping. Probably dive into that a little more. We may find that they're looking for deals, they're looking for whatever. There's a lot going on with tariffs and uncertainty. So I guess it doesn't surprise me too much that we're seeing some of that. Food and beverage year over year down. People, again, and if there's uncertainty, people aren't necessarily going out as much. But what we've seen is it's maybe the leads aren't as down much as search is. So yeah, maybe what that says is that our customers are very clickable. I don't know. But the visibility is down there. Property management is one of those ones that are doing really well. You can see here, even though map is kind of flat, but search impressions are up year over year. Leads, I included web clicks. Here I included directions kind of split out from leads, because those are kind of drivers of leads for retail, where something like property management services, web clicks kind of drive a little bit more. Year over year doing really well. Period over period down a little bit. Home services, map impressions are up, which is strange because home services are usually services you're not driving there. But we're seeing web clicks, even though it's down year over year, period over period, up a little bit. Financial services taking a really big hit, which doesn't surprise me with, again, the uncertainty that's going on. Very much down year over year and period over period. Insurance services, though, up. A lot of people looking into that. And then lastly, education and healthcare. Education down a little. Healthcare up when it comes to maps, web clicks. I'm going through this very quickly, obviously, because we're at the end. We will share this out, and we'll have more data to talk about on this next month. So apologies for not giving it the time on this. Wanted to also just get to some checkbox optimization things. Really only two new categories that we saw: aesthetics services, which is beauty service, I think skin care. Also bartending service. So if you provide bartending services, who can I contact if I'm not receiving these after each meeting? If you are a customer of ours, talk to your CSM on that. Otherwise, Danielle, I don't know if you can put something in the chat to reach out if someone is not receiving these. It may be going to your junk mail. That's also a possibility. We find that happens sometimes when they're automated emails. One other thing, when it comes to attributes, this is newish. I don't know how long it's been there because some of our customers are taking advantage of this. But I noticed we have a lot of customers that are hair salons or barbers, and they have beer that they serve there. Google's actually added beverages as an attribute for a lot of barbershops and hair salons. So if you offer beverages and you didn't see this and you are a beauty salon, hair salon, barbershop, go ahead and take advantage of that. I think that's great. And then lastly, just some things that I caught in the wild that I thought were fascinating. One I noticed last night, if you're a hotel, I'm noticing that they're beyond the normal local pack that we see. There's also, as you scroll down, a second 3-pack and then another 3-pack below there. And one of the things that I discovered is that the results aren't necessarily the same. So when I go into this, what you find in the travel map, those top 3, the next ones are different. If I go into the next one, essentially each 3-pack is its own top 3 with different results underneath it, which is really fascinating. We're going to have to look into it a bit more, but just wanted to pass that along. And then lastly, a couple months ago, I mentioned that posts and review snippets are appearing in the photo carousel in Google Maps app. I noticed now that attributes are also appearing for this gas station. I noticed sells diesel gas. One of the things, though, is it takes the place of the review snippet. So one of the things I discovered is that there are 3 review snippets that could appear. When things like the attribute appeared, one of the review snippets did not appear. So it could be that there aren't enough review snippets to highlight those things. So Google is looking at the attribute to highlight that it sells diesel gas. One of the other things besides attributes that I noticed that are being highlighted are also the place topics. So those little buttons that appear over reviews, like those highlighted, the things that are talked about the most, Google is also using those as a way to highlight what this picture represents in the photo carousel. So I just thought those were all very interesting and an expansion on a feature that we've been tracking for a few months now. We're right at time. I went through that very quickly. Not a lot of time for questions. We will send this along. I don't know if we got a message, if that question was answered around getting the...
I reached out.
Okay, perfect.
And if anybody else has any trouble too, let me know and we can make sure you're getting those.
Yeah. Another way too is if for some reason you aren't able to get it, and again, you can ask your CSM, they'll give you a link. These are also available via our SOCi University. So once it's published, usually it takes a few days, but if you're not getting it for some reason, also check SOCi University. There is a section where all of our webinars are posted and all of the resources that go along with it, the links, the deck, everything. So you'll have that there. I want to thank Damien, though. Damien, thank you so much for joining us this week and presenting what you found. Exceedingly fascinating. I went through your article and I still missed a couple things that you were talking about, and I loved seeing you expand on that. So I hope everyone checks that out.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. It was fun to join you.
So appreciate everyone. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully you'll be back to join us next month, and have a great rest of your week.